Namaskar, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am very, very happy to host Mr. Vikrant Shetty, partner at Dhruve Liladhar and Company, on the show today. Vikrant is an alumnus of GLC, where he also later taught as a professor. After graduating from GLC, he worked with Zarir Bharucha and Associates, that is ZBA, where he worked on shipping-related disputes and maritime matters. In 2018, he started his independent practice and started his own law firm called Taurus Legal. And in that way, he has set a benchmark and a name for himself to be one of the youngest partners at a law firm, and also in a way to start his own law firm, which focused on commercial practice. And another short anecdote about Vikrant is that he also taught me DPC back in GLC, and he also took my Viva, wherein he questioned about what will you do, Shivam, after you graduate from GLC? And he was not very happy with my answer. So I think
okay. But overall, I think you did well. I mean.
Thank you. So I think now it's my turn to ask him some questions today. And I will start with the most obvious one and the golden question, Vikrant. Why law? What was your motivation behind pursuing law?
First of all, thanks for having me, Shivam. It's a golden question, but unfortunately, I can't give a very mind-blowing answer to this question, because law was a subject I was always interested in, but it wasn't something I was sure I would want to take up as a profession. So there's no funny moment that I read a John Grisham novel and I decided, oh, you know what, I'm going to become a lawyer one day. Nothing of that sort. So it was just one of the options in my mind. I remember in 9th or 10th grade, I had taken a career aptitude test. And, the results, there were like 10 results to that, and it just confused me more. And lawyer was not one of the results, but judge was. So basically, what I did is I ended up taking up science, because, once you take up science, you have the option of doing law still is always open, and, you can keep your option for medicine also open. By the time the 2 years of science got done, I realized that, this is medicine is not for me. The only thing common I have with a doctor is the bad handwriting. That's it, nothing else. And law was what was then became my first option later. So again, like no great answer to this question as to why it just happened. I can just tell you this, that most of my school life I was the monitor of the class. So I don't know if that law and order thing somewhere was instilled into me, but that is something I'll have to get psychoanalyzed by an expert someday. Then maybe we'll find out.
Well, that may have helped you in some way. Before I ask you about your journey at GLC, I wanted to ask you about your experience as an article clerk, because this is a doubt which many students have. They do consider taking up the article clerkship as opposed to a long-term internship without really understanding the nuances of it. So could you share your experience of pursuing the article clerkship and how it has helped you today, and what factors students largely should take into consideration before they join the article clerkship?
Okay. Firstly, I'll tell you the reason why I went into article clerkship in the first place. So prior to doing signing my articles, I was doing a lot of the 2-month internships, which is generally the trend. You do a 1 or 2 month internship in every firm. So, and by 3rd year of law, I was pretty sure that I want to do litigation. I can't do a test job. Litigation I was pretty sure about that. And the one thing I realized that if you want to do litigation, a 2-month internship is not enough to even scratch the surface. By the time, you'll never see a matter from start to end in a 2-month internship. Suits to just forget about it. The interim application also, if you get to see, it's like you're just lucky. So which is different from a transactional. Like if you want to get into a transactional job, then of course there is a chance that from the moment the mandate comes till the time the agreement is structured and then drafted and then the transaction is closed, like the agreement is registered, there's a chance you can do that in 2 months. But litigation is just impossible. So my reason for signing articles was that I wanted something long term, because when you are there as an article clerk, when you sign the 3-year contract, they know that you're going to be working at that firm for 2.5 years. right? As in the last 6 months go in the study leave. That's why. So the 3-year contract, you're working for 2.5 years. Last 6 months go in you studying for the solicitor's exam. So when you're there for 2.5 years, they know that, okay, this guy is going to be here. We can actually invest our time in, explaining the matter to him. Because otherwise, if somebody is going to leave in a few months, there's no point. There's so much background in litigation. Most of the matters, when you get into it, they're already pending for years. There's so much background. Imagine if you got involved in a matter which you know is going to end in a month, but still you have to read the pleadings, affidavits of evidence, notes of cross-examination, all the judgments you have to read. And then at that much time, nobody in the firm can allot you other work. You just be reading the one matter. And by chance, on that date, if there's a date which is adjournment, which is given, so the whole thing is a waste. So ultimately, my reason was that if I'm in litigation, I want to commit to somebody that, look, I'm going to be here for a long term. You can give me the work. It will lead to something productive. It's not like if you explain the matter to me, it's not going to go waste. And partly, it's of course a kind of like self-discipline also that whenever I did the 2-month internship, also most of the time I was offered like an extension, and I didn't take it up because I always felt that, okay, I just started. How can I, commit myself to something which is going to be long term? I need to explore more options, and because of that, I always turned down the extension. And if I sign the contract, I'm creating an obligation for myself also. That, look, I have to stay in this firm, right? So that was basically my motive for doing the articleship. There are many other reasons. Of course, the main reason people go for articleship is to give the solicitor's exam. Now, for me, I was very clear that when I signed my articles, I didn't do it to give the exam. I didn't do it because I wanted to become a solicitor. I did it for this purpose. But and I had a very good 2.5 years, by the way, during my articleship, because of that position. Like I explained to you, people actually gave me work. In fact, they preferred me over an associate because associate may not be there for 2.5 years. This guy is. Right? There's a high chance of me staying and a less chance of the associate staying. So I had a very good experience in that point of time. I learned all my fundamentals of litigation at that point of time, and quite a lot of conveyancing also, because to give the SOLS exam, they make sure that the article clerk gets an all-round training, a little bit of corporate, a little bit of litigation, little bit of conveyancing. And when the time came for me to go on the leaves, so there were three other article clerks with me. One of them had just left 6 months back. One was about to leave in the next 6 months, and 2 who were leaving with me. And it was just the kind of peer pressure that I had just confided in a few people in the firm that, look, I don't want to give the exam because I didn't want. So the people who I had confidence in, I just told them, and they were like, no, you have to give the exam. You have to give the exam. अभी इतना articleship sign किया. I was like, this is not why I signed articles, but ultimately peer pressure, I ended up going on the study leave. I ended up giving the exam, and obviously I didn't have much interest in it, but I ended up clearing 3 out of 6 papers. But I never gave a further attempt. The reason being because by then I had started my own practice, and I can't tell clients that, hey, look, after every 4 months I'm going to go on a 2-month break, and then I'll come back to your matter. Obviously, they're going to be like, you give your papers and give us our papers back. That's how the client is going to react, right?
Yes.
So, but in retrospect, I don't regret going on the 6-month leave for the SOLS exam. The knowledge factor which is there, the amount of knowledge you get when you study for the SOLS exam, it's unparalleled. Okay, my knowledge of CPC has improved so much. Which also because of the articleship itself also improved so much, because by the time I was in final year of law, and you have CPC and ADR in the final year, right? So by that point of time, I already knew more than what was in the syllabus, in at least those subjects. So, so of course, the in-depth knowledge you get when you study for the SOLS exam really has a value. So whoever's planning to give the exam, I will tell you this, that if you are planning to sign articles, do it for the knowledge. Don't do it because you want that qualification of solicitor. Don't do it for that reason. That is just the carrot at the end of a stake. It's like you can go running in your garden every day, but if you sign up for a marathon, then you feel that obligation. Oh, now I have to run. You go to a gym after you take a membership because you feel that obligation that, oh, now I've paid for this gym membership, now I have to go. You can earn more money, but then once you take a loan and you have to make those EMI payments, then you're actually motivated. No, now I have to work hard and earn more money. So basically, the SOLS exam, when you go and give it, that's the obligation it creates, right? That's you're creating an obligation on yourself, and that makes you disciplined. That makes you, so can you study for the SOLS exam without actually giving the exam? Of course, but you're not going to do that, obviously, unless that obligation is there, unless you have that carrot in the end of the stick that, okay, I'm going to get a solicitor qualification in the end of this, right? So
It's,
yeah.
yes.
No, ask me. Yeah. So you had a question?
No, it's interesting that you mentioned that you were very clear from the beginning that you did not want to appear for the exam, but you wanted to pursue your article clerkship for the sake of knowledge and experience. So, do you think that students who are pressurized to sit and clear this exam, obviously after their article clerkship, are they under any sort of obligation, or are they missing out on a lot if they don't get that solicitor tag? What are the specific advantages of being a solicitor as opposed to just finishing, the article clerkship?
Yes. So does the solicitor qualification have value? Yes, it definitely does. If someone tells me they are a solicitor, I go on the presumption that they have a very strong theoretical knowledge on at least those subjects which are there in the solicitor exam, and that they have a somewhat ability, a good problem solving ability, because the SOLS exam is not like your Mumbai University exam, right, where the objective is to fill as many pages as possible. Mostly it's situational questions that are in convincing and all, you have a few drafting, but it's mostly situational questions and the answers are not more than half a page or sometimes 1 page. So it's more about how would you advise a client in this situation. So it's the thought process that actually develops in the solicitor's exam. So obviously when somebody tells me they're a solicitor, my impression of them is different, right? And against when somebody just tells me, okay, they've got a law degree. I mean, you could have got an LLB degree if you studied from Mokkal or what is the equivalent in Pune? Patan, yeah. Yeah. No offense to Mr. Mokkal or Patan. I mean, but they know what their notes are, right? So getting a law degree doesn't have that much value as, having the solicitor qualification. Of course, it makes a huge difference. And especially if you are going into the field of conveyancing, real estate, it makes a huge difference there. A lot of financial institutions, local authorities like the MCGM, they give a lot more weightage to a title certificate if it's given by a solicitor, because and they'll only recognize a title certificate if it's given by a solicitor. Another small benefit which is there, I mean, this can't be the main reason why you give sols, but if you are a solicitor of Bombay Incorporated Law Society, then you don't have to give the AOR exam and go undergo the training under the Supreme Court rules. So again, you wouldn't give the sols exam with that intention, because it would be easier just to give the AOR exam and undergo that training. It's just a side benefit. But yeah, there are advantages to getting the solicitor qualification. But one thing I tell you, if you are genuinely, anybody who wants to genuinely give the solicitor exam and wants to get qualification, I'll just give them one piece of advice that, and this is just my personal opinion, that give the first attempt your all, give it the 6 months. Whenever you're giving a subsequent attempt, don't take more than 1 month break at a time. Because a lot of people think, okay, I have 3 papers left to clear. I'll take 3 months off before the next attempt, and I'll give those 3 papers. But no, that if you've not done it in 1 attempt, it's okay. You do it in 3-4 attempts. You have 6 attempts to clear the papers, right? And it's not just about clearing the papers. You have to get that aggregate also. That's also important. So give it. If don't focus on clearing 3 papers, you focus on clearing 1 or 2 at a time. That's fine, because those breaks which you constantly take from work will very adversely affect your profession and your practical knowledge, and it will affect, like, why did I sign the 2.5-year contract? So people give me work thinking I'm there for the long term. It'll affect that. People will stop giving you work if they think that you're constantly not there. When you were a law student, you're constantly taking breaks to give the exam, and even now after you're a lawyer for 3 years, you're going to do that. No, it doesn't. It's not good for your profession. So if you are doing it for the qualification, first of all, that should be your second priority. Do it for the knowledge. And if you want the qualification, don't take too many breaks. If you are really passionate about it, you should find a way to, later on, after the first 6-month break which you take, find a way to fit in those studies while you're practicing. It's difficult, but if you really want it in the end of the day, you have to manage it that way.
Well, thanks a lot for your honest outlook to the solicitor's exam. I hope all the aspirants are listening and taking notes. Coming back to GLC, you first studied at GLC, and then you came back as a visiting professor. How has your experience been, first as a student and then starting as a visiting professor at the GLC?
Okay. So I have always loved teaching, especially law. Yeah, I love teaching in general, but when I teach a law subject, at least I know what I'm teaching. So it's always good. I mean, GLC is one place, as you know, in the earlier days, the attendance was a huge issue. So which was actually good for me because I also at that point of time was not comfortable talking in a class of 50 plus students. So basically, I was teaching the first year of the 3-year course and the final year of the 5-year course. I remember, and so basically, when you're teaching the first year of 3-year course, you have 40 students in the class. It's first year, so they come, and by the time it's final year, I think you're lucky to get more than 10, right? So, but it's a very good experience. Even it's a small batch, it's very nice. I would have continued to teach. I think I thought for 3 years. Yeah, 3 years I was teaching over there, and later on you also joined, of course, GLC yourself, and you also had a good experience there. Of course, then the timings became a bit of an issue because it became hard when I started my own firm to go early mornings, do the lecture, because it starts at 7 o'clock in the morning, as you know, wake up. And at that point of time, I was staying in Andheri. Now I have at least moved to Kolaba. But at that point of time, to travel all the way from Andheri to Churchgate in the morning, that it became too tiring. And of course, the other pain is correcting Mumbai University question papers, the answer books, and what do the students write in that? Yeah, that's ultimate. Sorry, you're on mute.
No, I was talking about the CAP.
So Mumbai University answer papers to correct was the biggest bane of my existence. It was so that's one of the bigger reasons that takes a toll on you. So for that reason, I had to stop. But if I ever get a little bit of more time, I'll definitely would like to go back to GLC to teach. I do teach a little bit now legal subjects to management students of Sydenham and NMIMS because the timings are very flexible over there. So definitely, I mean, I look forward to one day teaching again at GLC. My teaching career, I hope, is not over.
Well, that's great, and I'm sure students will benefit from your guidance, as they are benefiting now through this podcast. So, my next question is about the field of law that you chose initially when you joined ZBA. What was your thought process and the inclination towards maritime law, which led you to focus, because it's a very niche area of practice, and I'm sure you must have weighed in certain factors before taking that up.
Right. So the first time I got an exposure to maritime law was when I was so I had the good fortune of being able to work as an intern with one of the judges of the Bombay High Court. And in that 2 months when I was interning, that judge had the assignment for Admiralty law matters. So that was the first time I got a little bit of exposure to it. And I found it interesting, but I didn't have so much knowledge of it that I could think about pursuing it as a career because, when you're interning with the judge, you're sitting on this side of the bar and you don't know how the perspective is on the other side. So later on, a friend of mine ended up joining a senior counsel who was doing primarily maritime law. And from him, I got a better perspective as to how, Admiralty law practices, what exactly does it entail. That is not just litigation, it's also advisory. Most of the work is advisory, and everything I got to learn from him. And when this opportunity came up with a firm called ZBA, I was excited. I cleared the interview. I got the offer on the same day. I accepted it also on the same day. Everything got done. And I had a very good experience at ZBA. So ZBA is not one of those firms where, for the sake of it, you have to sit from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Just pretending to be busy. The way the managing partner over there, Mr. Zarir Bharucha, the way he runs the firm, it's really something that you only need to you'll see it, and then you need to see it to believe it, basically. Right? So his philosophy was that take a limited number of matters and make sure that you do justice to those matters instead of taking volume-based work, which is something I try to incorporate even in my practice even today. that, and literally there were times when Zarir would get like lucrative, huge matters, and he would say, "No, I have too much on my plate," and he wouldn't take it up because you need to do justice to the matter that you've already taken, right? And so, if anybody wants to start their own practice, I would say don't have that FOMO, that fear of missing out, that if this client goes, he'll never come back to me again. It's okay, matters will come. The main thing how you get a matter is you do quality work in the matters you have. It's not, people always think that, the bird in the bush is worth more. No, it's not. You take care of one that you have here. So with Zarir, I learned a lot, not just on maritime law, but also generally Zarir is a person who likes to, he reads a lot. He's a person who reads not just about law and current affairs, but he reads about history, a lot of subjects. And he would encourage me also to do the same. When I was in the office, sometimes I would be, and if we on a Saturday, if we had free time, I would be reading, maybe a book on partition, or maybe some law related book, which I would otherwise not have read because it has no direct relation to the work I'm doing. Like Informal Constitution by Abhinav Chandrachud, or Art of Cross-Examination by Francis Wellman. There's one book I would recommend every litigation lawyer to read. It's P.B. Vacha's book, and I think it's called Judges, Lawyers, and Cases of the Bombay High Court. Yep. Where he gives a nice history of the court from the 1600s, and then he moves on to his own personal experiences of lawyers who he has seen working during the early 20th century. And some of them you heard of, like Dr. Ambedkar, etc., and some of them you've not heard of because they're of a bygone generation. But he explains the manner of how they used to practice, what was the approach towards clients, what is the approach towards juniors, and it's a very interesting read. I mean, if you're going to do litigation, that's definitely a must read. Yeah. So basically from Zarir I learned this, how to maintain this work-life balance, that because we get that fatigue. We read so much in law that you get that fatigue. You can't read anything which is not law related later on, and that's very important. It's not, if you want to be a good lawyer, it's important to develop yourself. You have to level up yourself as a human being in order to level up as a lawyer, right? So that self-development is very important. Another thing important I learned from Zarir is DYOR, do your own research, because Zarir, despite being so senior, he would himself open up the commentaries, read it. He would go to the library, take out 50 years worth of Bombay case reporters, the case notes. He would look, open each one and look for an answer to his query which he had. And the tendency, because usually is when you become more senior, you get the research done and it is given to you. The junior does the research, the junior gives it to you, and you see the end result. You don't go into how this was arrived at, and that's very important, especially if you want to have the confidence while you're arguing a matter, or even if you're advising a client. It's very important to know that background as to not just what the law is, but why it is and how it came to be. So I'll just give an example. There was this one article of the Limitation Act which we were doing research on, and Zarir didn't just go into the 1963 Act and the judgments under it. He pulled out an older version. I think it is 1908 Limitation Act, and the one older to it, which was in the 1800s. And he saw the legislative notes. There was one word missing in the article, and he actually checked why did this word get removed, and also what was the judicial interpretation at that point of time, how did it evolve over time. At that point of time, even if the section was exactly how it is now, the way the courts looked at it was different. And why is that so? So then, and just to see how in-depth research translates to a structured argument which you make in court is like, it's just something you have to see. I mean, I can't explain it in words. You just have to be there and see it, and then it makes a huge difference. It's just something beautiful. And another important thing I learned from Zarir was this, that industry knowledge is very important. Okay, so if you're doing a specialization in any field, you need to have the industry knowledge. So and it's not just, so basically Zarir used to read a lot, not only on non-law topics, or not on shipping law. He used to read on shipping, not law, shipping itself, and he was very well versed as to what was going on in the industry, what were the issues they faced. And that's how you advise clients in the end of the day, right? In any field. And I'm just giving the example of shipping, but in any field, if you want to be able to understand your client, understand the issues he's facing, give a practical solution, then you have to understand where he's coming from, what are the issues procedurally, or practically, what is workable. And you can't just be a lawyer who gives a bookish answer, right, in the end of the day. And so even in my firm, like, we have two lawyers who do real estate law, and they always know that, okay, this project has stopped because it's got this issue, or the construction stopped here, this is the issue which is happening, this, like, they didn't get the CRZ license, etc., whatever it is, whatever the issue may be. So because of that, even if I'm going to buy a property, I'm going to ask them first, not from a law point of view. I just want to know, because they have so much commercial knowledge about the area. So if you're choosing a specialization, I think this is like a good principle to have in mind, that it's not just that you like the area of law, but you like the subject matter itself. So if you like sports law, you have to be actually interested in sports. You can't not like sports and then do sports law. Similarly, the same way with shipping. So today, I don't read the newspaper. I mostly get my news from InShorts. But there are two shipping publications that I subscribe to, and one of them is a daily shipping newspaper which I read on a daily basis, and the other one is a fortnightly one. But I always keep myself updated on it because I genuinely want to know what is happening. So it doesn't matter which field of law you're going to. Always, if you want to advise a startup on how to advise startups on how to get funding, if you want to do private equity and VC, then you have to follow what are the startups that got funding, why did they not get funding, why did this VC back out, because then you understand the issues related to it. That's a very important thing. So so apart from maritime law, of course, I learned a lot at my time at ZBA itself, and I mean, I just don't know how to keep myself updated. Even just last couple of weeks back, I attended one conference where there must have been me and one more lawyer. That's it. And it was actually a conference between people in the shipping industry, and they were speaking about topics such as inland vessels. So when we practice at maritime law here, mostly we are dealing with ships which are going at sea and the cargo which is being transported by sea, not the inland waters. And because I went over there, and maybe I might get some work related to it or not, but I was genuinely interested that how is this field of inland waters developing. So yeah, just how to constantly keep yourself updated, and if you want to do a specialization, make sure you love the subject matter. That is my key takeaway from ZBA.
Right. And in 2018, you started your own law firm, Taurus Legal. I remember getting the card, but I want to know the journey behind, because it looks easy, but I'm sure there must have been many challenges before starting the firm and even when you were helming the firm yourself. And what advice would you like to give to lawyers who wish to start their own firm or practice in general?
So again, Zarir was the one who encouraged me to start taking up my own matters, and because he felt that I'll learn more, and that was very something I'm always grateful to for. So from that point of time, I already had started taking up my own matters, and reached a stage where I, like Zarir had advised, I decided that I need to do justice to my clients. So I went independent, and there at that point of time, I had how much? 3 years of experience. Yeah, 3 years of experience at that point of time. And I really wanted to be around somebody who has that experience level, not just in terms of law, but in terms of general, how to start your own independent practice. So I approached one of my mentors, a person who I really respect, somebody who's still a mentor of mine, and a senior solicitor, Mr. Dilip Udeshi. And he very graciously just offered that, why don't you sit in my office, you work over here. And that's where Taurus Legal was basically born. So Mr. Udeshi is just a gentleman who he had started the firm Udwade Udeshi. So of course he had the knowledge of how to start your own practice. He was before that he was a partner at Crawford Bailey, and he's just someone I really look up to, and a very humble person, very knowledgeable in law. He till date he remains the only person I've worked with who I think I've never been able to defeat in a legal argument. Like every time we had a legal discussion and we had a difference of opinion, I would do my research, and then after doing my research, I would realize that he was right all along, because sometimes he would know the judgment which he's referring to, or the authority he's referring to, and sometimes he wouldn't. And even then, whatever he was saying later on, I would realize it's word to word from some other judgment which is already passed. And I guess it's just the osmosis factor. Like you're in the profession, you hear everything and you learn so much and you've got so much knowledge, because he's got more than 50 years in the profession. He's more than 80 years old, and he's a person who's really very he has a real passion for law. And he comes to the office even now every day. I remember once he had got malaria, and next week he was back in office. And I just entered my 30s, and I don't know if I could do that now. But yeah, so basically I had his guidance with me, and Taurus Legal wouldn't have been possible without him. I started Taurus Legal from his office. At that point of time, also a friend of mine who wanted to do an LLM in sports law. He was going to go for his LLM in 6 months. I think his admission, everything was done by then. And he wanted somewhere where he could work for that 6-month period till he goes for his LLM. And I told him that, look, this is what I can afford to pay, which is, of course, peanuts compared to what he was otherwise getting, because this friend of mine was senior to me in the profession. So, but he was so understanding, genuinely very understanding. And, even at times when there was no office space, no space for him to sit, he would go like to a nearby library. He would bring his own laptop and he would work from there. And, that level of understanding, that was very great on his part. And when you start up, you need those kind of people who, understand where you're coming from. And he knew that, okay, whatever I'm paying is the best of my ability. And, I'm also not going to trouble him by overusing him, by exploiting him. So, we share that wavelength. It's the same like how I share the wavelength with Mr. Udeshi, with Zarir. I share the wavelength with my friend over here. He's also a very good example of that do what you love thing, by the way. He did his sports law, and now he's working in Dream 11, and because he loves sports itself. So, but yeah, basically he was the one who was there when I didn't have an associate. He was the first associate of Taurus Legal officially, right? And when you have a startup, you need people like that. So even later on, when we went on to hire, we wanted people who understand that this is a startup work. So basically, obviously we can't offer a tier 1 salary, but this is what we can offer you. We'll make sure that litigation, when you're practicing here, you're actually involved in the matters. You're actually briefing the counsel yourself. You get to appear yourself also in matters. That's the exposure which you're getting over here, which you won't get in a tier 1 firm. And it's not like a tier 1 firm where you're purely doing a postal work. That okay, counsel is doing everything. You take the papers from the client, you give it to the counsel, you get back. No, it's not like that. I mean, I know I'm generalizing over here. It's not every tier 1 firm is not like that. I'm giving a slight generalization, which may not be fair to some firms, but most of them are like that. Okay, so yeah. So when you're starting up, you have to be ready to do everything. I remember once I went to serve. So my clerk had not come. He was not well that day, and we had to give a notice for production. And I went. I'm not going to say the name of the firm, but it's a firm where you used to work earlier. So, and I went over there, and I actually went to serve the notice of production with the papers myself. And then, the looks I was getting, because they're like, oh, there's a lawyer over here who's come to do service. And I was like, okay, what option do I have? I can't, the matter can't suffer. I have to do justice to the matter. Yeah? That's the first priority. And there's nothing which is below your dignity when it comes to you doing your work. Yeah. And whether it's you stitching a brief yourself or you scanning a document yourself, taking a photocopy yourself, it's really nothing. The matter is what matters in the end of the day. So, Taurus Legal was doing well. Fortunately, so another thing when you're starting your own firm is that you notice that if you're good in your work, 90% of your matters will come from other lawyers itself, and that's true even till date. Like, so, because a lot of people know that I practice in shipping, so I get a lot of shipping matters from people who don't. I do commercial arbitration, so a lot of criminal lawyers who I've worked with in the past, whenever they get a matter, they do it, and of course vice versa. Whoever's good in their work ultimately gets work from some place or the other. That's what the key thing is. And subsequently, two people who I worked with earlier, Mr. Mehta and Mr. Chetta, they joined me. We converted Taurus Legal into a partnership firm, took our own office space. I had to unfortunately move out of Udeshi sir's chamber, but what to do? I mean, we expanded, so we had to take our own place later on. And yeah, that's how Taurus Legal, and it's been doing well. Even during the COVID period, we did like every year we did better than the last. Even during the COVID year, we actually ended up doing better than the last, despite those 3 months of not having any litigation work. Did well.
Well, that's really inspiring, and especially for, as I said, lawyers who wish to start their own journey. And later on, Taurus Legal got merged with Dhruve Liladhar, and now you're the partner there. Would you like to talk about that and your experience now, which you said it has been now for 6 months? Would you like to share your experience?
So I mean, the experience was what we expected, right? Because we worked, all three of us actually, all the partners of Taurus Legal were at one point of time associates at Dhruve Liladhar. So we actually knew everyone there already. We knew, how the practices over there, and because of that, we knew that we have a common wavelength, and that's of course the most important thing when you're looking to work with somebody. I mean, I wouldn't have joined a partner or partnered with somebody who I don't share a wavelength with. So your ultimate vision, your core philosophies have to be the same. And DLCO was looking to expand, we were looking to expand, and the timing just worked out well. And so we merged in January. It's been a little bit around 6 months now, and it's going well. And there is a familiar feeling, but it's also a new feeling, because earlier I was sitting in the associates pool. Now sitting in the same place as a partner. It's, of course, that has changed, but otherwise it's the same place. So it's familiar and different at the same time.
So Vikrant, as I mentioned earlier, at such a young age, you are heading the law firm, and not any law firm, one of the most prestigious law firms. And you've also had your experience, as I've mentioned before, of starting your own law firm and also being an article clerk. So in a way, you've done it all, and you've been teaching, and you've been attending conferences and so on and so forth. Have you ever thought about what next? What lies next for Vikrant? Maybe on an immediate basis or on a long-term basis?
So apart from the fact that I was sure that I was going to start my own firm someday, I don't think I ever had like a proper roadmap as to where I was going to be in the next 5 years and 10 years and so. And even now, that's not the case. The only aim, I would say, is always keep getting better and better in your work. And wherever there's a place where when you have that environment where you are free to do your work to the best of your abilities, and also take those strategic calls yourself. That's the high you get, right? That's the environment that I want to be in, and I'm already in it. But now it's just getting better and better in your work, and I don't know where that would lead me. I don't know where I'll be in 5 years or 10 years, but as long as I'm getting to do that, getting to do better work, getting to take those calls, I'm just happy. There's no plan as such.
Yeah, thanks for that candid answer. And one more thing, which often a lot of law students ask, they put it in comments, or they reach out otherwise, saying that how do they ensure that they send the right kind of an application for internship to a law firm, and what are the factors that they should take care of while drafting their CV or cover letter, or when they appear for the interview? And what qualities do you look at now that you're on the other side, you're the partner, in an intern? And also, if later you could shed some light on the qualities that you would look at in a potential associate.
Right. So when you become partner, you realize that because of the time constraint, on an average, when you receive a CV, you don't give it more than 6 seconds usually. Yeah, because when you're on when you're applying, you usually think that, oh, this guy's going to read every full stop and comma in my CV, which is not to say that your CV shouldn't be well formatted and well drafted. Of course, it needs to be. Because if by chance in those 6 seconds I come across a mistake, then obviously that's going to, going to be a ground for me to reject it immediately. But those 6 seconds are very important. You have to highlight what is the work that you've done in the past. And when you come for the interview, even if you don't know anything else, at the bare minimum, you have to know everything about the work that you've written in your CV. So it may be that you just in an internship drafted a power of attorney. Okay. So in the interview, I'm definitely going to ask you, okay, what are the laws of agency under the Contract Act? Although at the time when you were drafting the power of attorney, you may not have done it actually. In the sense that, generally your senior must have told you, okay, this is a format. These are the parties' names, put these parties' names, and this is the description of the property. And you did it that way, right? Which at that time also was the wrong thing to do. You should have, later on at least gone into the law. So that's basically one thing I look at that, okay, at that point of time, you might have done it mechanically, but later on, did you go into, why did you do it in that specific way? This is just one of the small things. So what do you write in your CV? You have to know that in and out. That's definitely one of the things. So in fact, before I got into Zarir, I'll tell you, it's a very interesting story as to how I got into Zarir. Before that, I had applied to, I think, 38 firms, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, and I'll tell you, only 3 rejected me. Yeah, and only 3 rejected me. Huh? The other 35 didn't even reply. So I mean, yeah. So effectively, didn't get an offer from any of those 38. Okay, and ultimately, it is such a luck by chance, honestly. And I remember I actually went to a couple of firms where I went to the physical copy of my CV, and I actually gave, because so in any of my internships, any of my jobs, I've never used a reference. I've just gone like even with that internship with the judge, I just went to his chamber with my CV after the quotas were done, and it just worked out. So yeah, so at that point of time, then it was such a luck that 6 months prior, this when I was started to apply to those 38 firms, 6 months before that, or maybe even more, I had uploaded my CV on the Bakura website, and and Zarir was hiring through Bakura. I think what the Bakura guys did is they did a search for whoever is an Admiralty or Maritime, and because I worked with a judge who at that point of time had that assignment, those keywords were there in my CV. And ultimately, that's why I got that interview, and that's how I cracked that ultimately. So yeah, I mean, don't feel defeated if you don't get it in your first application, second application. That hardly ever even happens, like, really. And make sure those keywords are there in your CV, I guess, because now in the future at least everything's going to be automated. It's going to be most companies already have it, but in India it's not so much that there's no machine reading of your CV, but it will come in someday. So that's important. And yeah, and when you're going to interview in a firm, make sure you know everything in and out about the firm. Yeah, do how much ever research you can about the firm and the person who is taking your interview, because ultimately if you're going to work with them someday, I mean, I'm not just saying it for the purpose of the interview, that in the interview you have to impress them with facts. So I did so much research about you. I went on Manupatra, I typed your name and I saw all these judgments. No, it's not for that reason. The reason being that you should know who you're going to work with, and it may be after the interview, after doing research, you may realize that you don't want to join the firm at all, right? So that's the main reason. So of course, these are a few things that you really need to take care of, and that's what I look for in terms of if I'm hiring an intern or associate. These are the few things I look at.
Well, that's great. I'm sure it will help students to know what they are getting into, and draft their CVs and covering letters accordingly. And as Vikrant mentioned, the keywords are very important, and you should know very well the in and out of your work, what you have written, and how it is relevant to the firm and the specific team that you're applying to. I guess we have covered everything, Vikrant, and I would just like to now ask you if there are any parting words of wisdom, or advice that you have for our viewers.
I think I've mostly covered everything. I mean, like I said, if you want to specialize, how to go about it, read a lot, not just on law, but whatever interests you, keep yourself updated. See, if you see the senior lawyers, they don't just know about law. They quite often they quote Shakespeare also in the arguments. So you have to be well read in that sense. And yeah, the final thing is just work hard, work smart, and ultimately the quality of your work will always speak for itself. That's it.
So thanks a lot, Vikrant, for this wonderful episode. And I'm extremely happy and thankful to you for sparing your time and just joining this initiative to inspire our budding lawyers to strive for excellence and be more socially aware and responsible citizens. Thanks a lot for your time, Vikrant.
And what you're doing with the channel is really great. I've been following it as you know, I've been following it for quite some time. So keep up the good work, and look forward to many good interviews.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.